Hi guys, welcome to another edition of Basketbros. I'm Will Vogel. I am filling in for Denzel Snipes. Denzel Snipes is not on the show tonight. He had other priorities, and Scott Morganrath may or may not join us. But joining us tonight for sure right now is Jacob Christner.
Jacob. Yes, I am the pundit's pundit. I'm your mother's favorite pundit's pundit. I am the grandfather's favorite pundit. I am the cricket's favorite pundit's pundit. I am also Alex English's pundit's pundit. I don't know how many others I am the favorite. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good. We're back from All-Star break. Basketball started a few days ago, and we're back to another regular season where teams are going down the stretch.
Absolutely. So we've got all the so here's the thing. We've got all the titles for tonight, topics. We got everything tonight, correct?
Yes, we do. So for our first topic, Budden, I think is this how you say Budden,
Joe
right?
Budden? Joe Budden?
But Joe Budden said
Budden.
Budden thinks Michael Jordan was the greatest marketing scheme ever, and players in the 80s sucked. Jacob, I'll let you go first, and then I'll follow up.
Well, one of the things to understand from something like this is you usually get this from people that are like 20, 21 years old. You know what I'm saying? You get it from people that are 20, 21 years old. You get it from people that never watched. To say that they stunk, okay? I got to wonder what his thing is. Is this something that he's a buddy of LeBron's? I'm trying to figure that out. Is he a buddy of LeBron's? Is he a buddy of people of this era? Because really, you get an issue with saying that that the whole late 80s stunk. You're forgetting Bird and Magic. You're forgetting Dr. J, which was most of the 80s. Are you forgetting Moses Malone? You're forgetting a lot of really good players. You're forgetting Kareem. It's like, what's his thought process? That's what I'd like to know myself. So what would you think about that?
So what I thought was like, he's completely wrong. There were so many other marketable guys. You got Magic Johnson, you got Larry Bird, you got Kareem, you got Julius Erving. You got other players, like you said. And also, you must have had a TV that just played Bulls games and nothing else, like WGN Chicago or something like that. But honestly, the guy's wrong. Look at some of the greatest players in NBA history. A lot of them came from the 80s. Well, a lot of them.
He was born in 80. He was 42 years old.
But still, that doesn't count. Like, come on, dude. You got so many All-Stars and Hall of Famers in the 80s, and you single it down to Jordan. Yes, Jordan was a great scheme.
Or is he a LeBron guy?
Or is he a LeBron guy? But there's so many other guys you could have brought on. Like, I bet you Magic Johnson or Larry Bird or any of those other guys would have been an amazing marketing trick also. Like, Jordan's not the only one.
Which they were. The biggest thing, though, the only thing I can think about is I have to remember for myself. I was born in 78. So that made me 6 years old when I got into, which makes me exceptionally rare to have that absorption at that age and fast. It's like I was able to do that. And I was lucky. Most kids don't get into it or not have knowledge till about 10, which means truly he was born in 80, which means on average they would be 10. He'd get his knowledge in 90 to 92. So that would be his world with Michael, but Michael in a prime. So when he'd be 20, he would be 23 when LeBron showed up. That was
exactly Michael Jordan wasn't really that dominant until the 90s.
Which, yeah, he would have been 12 years old. So
Exactly.
and the thing is, he's 23 when LeBron showed up. You have to wonder if they're buddies or if that's when he watched the most. Those are the things that
Exactly.
I have to bring that up when it comes to a lot of these people, because I was a little shocked because I've known Joe Budden's a bit older. You would understand that from the baby or whatever, somebody, someone with youth. You'd
Yeah.
understand that from somebody with that never watched her. They'd make fun of the short shorts. They'd make fun of the video quality. They make fun of. You'd understand that, and then they would just say it's all rough and it's all violence. They're better now. You'd understand that, but he's only 2 years younger than me.
Yeah, which is insane because I am my age and younger me still knew, even though I wasn't born in the 80s. There were so many great players in the 80s, and we just listed only half of them.
Yeah, and no, truly, and I wanted to say this, and just if you don't mind, I wanted to ask this for itself. Hey, Eric, are you available? I'd like to hear your opinion on it.
Ooh, bringing in Eric. Let's do it. Eric?
Well, let him be if he doesn't want to get. That's all I was just going to say, but I'd like to hear his because he's the one that brought up those 42 first. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's usually you get to the age of everything. But there he is.
There he is.
Eric, wanted to get your opinion on that.
As I always say, gentlemen, good evening first and foremost. And yeah, I'm never a hard man to find. This is totally unscripted, but go ahead. I'd love to.
Yeah, let's have Eric on the rest of the show. He'll be our awesome.
I'll be in and out, my brother. I'll be in and out. But
that's just what I wanted to know. It's like because I just said this myself, Eric. The biggest issue I had was the fact that usually you hear these things, and yeah, you said he's right. He's 42 years old. He's 2 years younger than me. So I was born in 78, and in 1984 I was already absorbing everything. So it's kind of a rarity as far as absorbing at that age. So he would absorb at about 10 years old, 12 years old. That's Michael. So he wouldn't get to the thing anymore and stuff like that. So he'd be 23 and it'd be LeBron. So you have to wonder if he got it late or if he just thought of Jordan.
That's a great question. And listen, there's no disputing that Michael Jordan really transcended the game. I mean, nobody can say that. Before him, yes, there were a bunch of great. There was Kareem, there was Walt, there was Dr. J, there was Moses Malone. I'm a Philly guy, so I grew up watching those guys, but I respected the James Worthys of the world and others who came up, the Bill Russells, of course, Larry Bird, Bill Laimbeer, the list goes on and on and on. But what Michael did in the 90s, and again, I'm 2 years older than you. So figure 91, 92, 93. Those were my teenage years. And everybody, didn't matter where you lived, didn't matter what your background was. If you appreciated and you loved the game of basketball, you either loved or you hated, but you respected Michael Jordan. So for Joe Budden to say that, it's one of those things where I'm like, players of the 80s sucked. And I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of a very negative connotation, a harsh reality, I guess, coming from him, because I would want to go deeper a dive into that and say, well, then tell me why,
Yeah.
And to call Jordan the greatest marketing trick, like, man, I could sit here and name you very easily 5 guys from 2000 till now who have just, taken what they know from the business side of things, elevated themselves far beyond the level and the game of basketball. And I can say the same thing about them, but out of respect for them and out of respect for the game, I'm not going to. So I appreciate it, fellas. Like I said, I'll jump on every now and then, but I'm gonna let y'all do your thing.
No problem. It's like, and I'll
Thank
say
you.
this: LeBron, KD, Harden's getting there. I'm just naming some names
Curry.
here. What'd you say?
I think Curry.
Yeah, Steph Curry. You get he's named. We named 4. I mean, the 5th on the deal. But these are where this is where it just confuses me. Unless he got a late start. Now everything's a late start to me. Everything's a late start to me when it comes to getting it, because I had an unusual knowledge for my age. So I am an 80s baby, even though I was born in 78. That's because my absorption started at that age, at basically mid 80s. So I'm more 80s than I am 90s, to be truthful. But I wish this is one of those where I wish we could have him on. I wish that there would have been, even though he would have made us pay. I know that part, and it's where.
Oh yeah, he would have.
But
yeah, no, I agree with you and Jacob, or Eric. Why did these players suck? Tell us why.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we're probably going to go through the topics fast because it's just two of us. Maybe it'll be a 35-minute show. Most overrated players, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. I'll give you my list. Do you want me to go first?
You go right ahead.
60s. This guy was a great coach. Don't get me wrong. Al Attles.
Okay.
Al Attles was overrated. He was a great coach, but he only averaged 8.9 points per game and 3.5 rebounds per game. Great coach, great upper management, not that great of a player. 70s, Spencer Haywood. He won an ABA MVP, but everything else, he did decent in the NBA, but nothing special. 80s, this is going to be controversial, and people are going to be like, whoa. Sean Kemp. After he left the Sonics, it went downhill.
He wasn't an 80s guy.
What?
He was a 90s. He was a 90s guy.
He started in the 80s, though.
Well, like 89. That's what I was. But I was a rookie.
89.
Man.
When I mean 80s, like 80 through 89.
Right.
Sean Kemp. After the Sonics, his weight went downhill, and he had alcohol issues and drug issues, so it all went downhill. 90s. Phenomenal college player. Not a really good NBA career. Christian Laettner.
15 points a game, though. That's a little. I think we're just expecting his all-time great college career to go in the NBA, so I can see that. But he had 15 points a game for 13 points a game for 15 years. That's not too bad.
Yeah, but still, I thought he would have been a lot better.
Well, we all would have. That's understood, though. Okay,
2000s, Eddie Curry. That guy was way overrated. 2010s, even though his rookie year was 09, he didn't play his rookie year. Blake Griffin. Injuries, being obnoxious, being like just injury-prone career. Yeah, he's revitalizing some of his career, but he went from the Clippers to the Pistons to the Nets to the Celtics. Like, how many more teams is this guy going to be on before he retires?
Yeah, it's understood. And I'm not going to go to the – I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to change it for myself. This is for myself. I'm glad you brought this up.
That's fine.
I'm going to change it for myself just because overrated is rough because we didn't have a lot of the technology to see a lot of the stuff for the deal. But I can say who didn't get shots during the time we could have said. We can say Connie Hawkins, 60s, 70s. You know, he played late because of the gambling scandals and everything like that. You know, truthfully, if you ended an overrated, but it was just because of his drugs, the drug use and everything like that. But even then, it's not getting a lot of shots. It wasn't his fault. You could say Roy Tarpley for the 80s because a lot of his was drugs, though. David Thompson, drugs. I mean, he could have been an all-time great. I mean, who could have been more? You know what I'm saying?
That's why I said Sean Kemp after the Sonics went downhill.
90s. 90s. That I'm going to put Kemp in the 90s. I'm going to say this I'm going to put that, and it's because he was so dominant for such a short time, but he let himself go.
Yes, he did. I agree.
He let himself go, and then he didn't set himself up, and he got lost. He gained a bunch of weight, and it was all that. Well, one of the things about who never got a chance, I'll say 2000s, Greg Oden.
Yeah.
I mean, just bringing that up. Greg Oden, and see, it's hard for me to say overrated because sometimes it's on my head, it's injuries. Sometimes it's injuries. Sometimes it's not 2000s and everything like that, I'm going to say Odin. Big deal here. And then you could also say one that never played. I'm going to say this here. One that never played will go to the 2000s. Frederick Weiss from Germany. The one that got dunked over by
Vince Carter. Yeah.
Vince Carter. Yep, he never played. He got. We talk about overrated. He got drafted by the Knicks and never played a game. Crazy. Frederick Weiss, you have that. 2010s. Because of the way the game changed. I'm going to back off on the 10s. And the reason being is because you know why I'm going to back off on it? Because it's so tempting. It's almost tempting to say LeBron because he went from Miami. And he went for that thing. You're supposed to have 4 in a row. But we know by his skill, he's not overrated. But personally, to me, it's hard to say overrated because the game changed so much. But the only thing I could say based off that, when I was saying LeBron, it's not his skill. It's just the fact that he set up one of the first giant super teams through his own well. And only won 2 out of 4. So does he make himself overrated, or does it make because I don't think so personally. He made 4 straight finals. So that's the only thing I can think of, because the game changed so heavily with the 3-point shot. You have 5 per quarter, 6 per quarter. It's like, what can you say? Who's the overrated one in that era? It's because, are the ones that don't shoot it? Are they the ones that are the overrated ones, the ones that do a mid-range, the rare ones that DeMar DeRozan? Maybe, if I'm going to say it, maybe Kawhi Leonard, and not because of his skill, because of the load management. He kind of invented load management. But other than that, it is hard because the game's skill changed so much.
I agree. Anyway, I know we're speeding through topics. It's going to be a short show, guys, tonight. It's only 2 of us. Legendary coach, Red Auerbach. This is our new segment. We are going to introduce legendary coaches. Besides the legendary players. And Scott said Red Auerbach, and I jumped on it because I'll go real quick. I love Phil Jackson. Scott!
Yes, how are you, my friends?
What's going on?
The third man of the hour. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
This guy needs no introduction. Bring
the 2 topics back for him. Bring the 2 topics back for him right now so we can take it, okay?
So, okay, I got you. Scott, Joe Budden or whatever says Jordan was the greatest marketing trick in that the players of the 80s suck. Jacob and I already discussed it. What do you think about this comment?
If anybody thinks that Jordan is the greatest marketing trick, I've only got one word for it. Thanks for bringing me on a few minutes later. But I got to tell you, that crab chimichanga was really good. So over at the bottom, that is delusional. All Michael Jordan was great, as in Tony the Tiger when he talks about his frosted flakes. He's great. Okay, see what happens when I eat, man? I have a little caffeine. I get to hang out with you guys.
Oh, yeah. Happens to me all the time.
But to answer your question, well, it's delusional. I'm sorry. I don't care about players of the 80s sucked. I don't know how much Valium or cocaine or heroin this guy is on. Because if the players in the 80s sucked, okay, then Santa Claus is Jewish.
Hey, now mind you, that you never know. You never know what comes on his gravestone.
Well, maybe not, but don't ruin a good one-liner, Christner, when I give it to you, brother, because that one is good. Give me a break. The 80s suck. I do shows all the time laughing at this group of whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. Give me a break, man.
Well, what the craziness I was bringing up is he's 40. He's only 2 years younger than me. So you would think that would come from a 20-year-old.
Yeah, and I was telling Jacob, I'm like, even when I was like 15 and barely paying attention to basketball and slowly getting into it, I knew Michael Jordan was the best. But I knew Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and James Worthy, Kareem, Julius Erving and those guys were also amazing players in the 80s.
Come on, that was a great era. What are you talking about? Am I going to be biased toward it, Will? You know what, Will? Yes, of course.
I would too. And Scott, what's that saying you say? I want to know what that guy is smoking or something.
I don't know.
Something.
I brought in the old,
What
if you're
Kool-Aid?
hashtagging that, okay, delusional, heroin, cocaine, pot, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Well, you know,
Scott, I think this guy had some bad Kool-Aid.
Yeah, right. Kool-Aid. Let's break that one down, Mr. Vogel. Bad Kool-Aid. I don't know. In my opinion, I love strawberry margaritas when I had the opportunity, and I'm not on the air. I have to make a confession here on your broadcast that once upon a time when I was working at the Tampa Tribune, okay, that I was watching the Lions lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Okay, you get this. And the Lions lost back then, and a bunch of my classmates, you know, one of which was Wayne Von and Mike, went over to Hooters, had a bunch of beers. Little did you guys realize, okay, that I had a deadline for the Trib, and I told the editor that I had a few extra beers. He said, you know what, it's one of the best stories you've ever written. He said, maybe you need to be drinking more beer after all. I won't tell the boss, but if you write this well, maybe I will. I'd be happy to do it. So I guess where does that tie to everything you guys are saying? It's pretty great, interesting. Okay. I don't know what this guy's thinking, but to me, if he thinks the 80s are sucked, let me tell you something, okay? To me, it doesn't take a rocket scientist took it from deep and have a brick, you know what I mean? And do it all the time. You have a jump shooters league. It's like, give me a break, Joe Budden. Okay. To me, this guy is delusional. And if I haven't used every single adjective, if this show ran 2 or 3 hours, I'll bet you I'll find him on the fly after a good crab chimichango. I don't think crab likes it, though. I don't know if crab is related to cannabis. I have no idea. Well, I'm just kidding with you guys.
Could be.
He's using plenty of it. He's using
anyway,
cannabis.
Scott, on to our next topic that you missed was the most overrated NBA players, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. I will run through my list again real quick because I want it. Al Attles was a great coach, but only averaged 8.9 points per game, 3.5 rebounds per game. Great coach, great upper management. 70s, it was Spencer Haywood. He won an ABA MVP, but he didn't do much after that in the NBA. Sean Kemp in the 80s. I know he started in 89. Kind of weird. It's at the late 80s. After the Sonics went downhill, he had drinking issues, he had alcohol issues, and he had weight issues. 90s, great college player. Christian Laettner was in the NBA. Could have been more. 2000s, Eddie Curry. 2010, even though his rookie year was 09 and he missed it because he was injured, Blake Griffin.
You know, Will, I got to tell you, my friend, you have a really good list. And one of the things I like about your list, not that I'm trying to dodge your question, but the thing I always like to mention is let's understand there's perception, there's reality. Okay, Will. All right. There's overrated and then there are bust. Okay. Just remember that. So what I'm going to do is let's just forget the decades for a moment. Okay. Now let's just go ahead if you guys don't mind.
That's fine.
Absolutely.
Talking about some guys. William Bedford came out, I think it was in Memphis State, I believe, if I remember right. There's a guy who was a coke head. I mean, you know, now one guy who unfortunately was a bad luck of injury was Sam Bowie. Yeah. But yeah, he's one of those what could have been. I think DeMarcus Cousins could fall into that category too. I really do.
Jacob brought up a good one. What if he could have done more was Greg Oden. And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good one too. Greg Oden. Again, the problem that you have though with these bigger centers is, you know, they're like horses. You don't know how good their legs are before they break, if you get my drift.
And there's so many great, not to speak of overrated, there's so many what ifs in NBA history.
Oh,
there's
no doubt about it. Well,
Brandon Roy, you've got Len Bias. There's
Bias wouldn't be overrated though. He never played.
No, he would have been good. I think he would have been a star.
Yeah, but Len Bias, you know, it's an interesting point how you bring him up. It's one thing about what you could have been, but that was simply tragic. If I ever wanted to talk about what could have been, what about Hank Gathers? I mean, if you had
Yeah.
ever,
Yeah.
what about Reggie Lewis? There's another guy that
Yeah,
you there
that's
too.
another.
He was really on the right track. Blake Griffin, I think you're dead on. I really, really, really do that. You really are.
Well, and
I think he got over his head after that dunk contest when he thought he was the next Spiel. But dude, you can't just dunk every game. In your mid-range is nothing.
Yeah, but you know another one, Will, that you're really on spot with is Christian Leitner. Number one, I have no idea, and I don't think I've been hit by a baseball bat yet. I may have been hit with concussions and head injuries, but tell me how the living heck that Christian Leitner could have ended up being on that Olympic team with all those NBA players.
because he was the best college player for that time. He just
Give it
was.
to Isaiah Thomas. Not
Well,
Leitner.
yeah, but we know there's a little bit of a situation, Will, between him and George.
Yeah,
you're
no,
gonna
we
do
know the whole
Isaiah.
story.
But
Right.
if you're going to do Isaiah, you replace John Stockton. And besides, John Stockton had a bad leg to begin with throughout that whole thing.
Right.
But
Leitner was just.
Leitner was the greatest college player of all time. He had Shaq beat on that one. Now in the pros, Shaq destroyed him.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Will. I do apologize.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
I'm not big on Leitner. I just am not. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not. And even though he ended up being on that team, okay, the word overrated is appropriate. Will, go ahead.
Real quick before we go to Red Auerbach, our coach, I want to say Leitner's great. He's not my college goat. I think the greatest college player in my mind is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Well, it'd have to be. That goes without saying. I was going to say there's one of them, but no, I'll tell you another one I said for the 80s. One thing I said for the 80s, Scott, Roy Tarpley, what he could have been, if he without the drugs.
No, there you go. Now you're right there, buddy. Roy Tarpley. You talk, but here's the thing, though. When you look at overrated, and bear with me on this one, okay? You have to factor in the drugs and the alcohol situation is what you have to do. Because then again, as Will alluded to moments ago, the what could have been. If you ever have to hashtag a show, make sure you what could have been and then overrated separately. I mess around with hashtags because that's my latest toy these days, trying to figure it out.
Oh, it's fun. I love using
Yeah,
that.
Yeah. So, yeah, Roy Tarpley, though, is a really, really, really good example. In fact, the Phoenix Suns, when they traded James Edwards to the Pistons, okay, did Detroit, and Buddha was a missing piece. And actually, one of my favorite interviews when I was in the locker room, every time I was working in the back.
Blue Edwards, yeah.
Oh, God, yeah. Are you kidding? Well, these are the best people. I had my favorites in the Pistons locker room. I really did. I knew I could count on all the time. And Buddha was definitely Joe Dumars. Isaiah was there when I needed him. Dennis Rodman was my favorite because we were both crazy. So, but that wasn't before he went overboard. So so your next question is, was he that correct? No. When he was in Detroit, okay, he was a straight shooter. But I think the thing that has to be put into perspective, again, is like you said, you guys have mentioned some really good examples about Greg Oden. My gosh, I mean, now you're going to say, Jacob, that you think that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was the greatest college player. The only way I might probably go against you on this if I include a guy by the name of Bill Russell out of the University of San Francisco.
Yeah.
Possible.
I think if I'm not wrong, they won a national championship this same year in football as well.
Right.
Basketball and football, ironically.
Yeah, I mean, Elvin Hayes could make a case for what he did over the University of Houston as well when they had that big game. I think it was UCLA against Houston I think it was a championship. I don't know what it was. They played in the Astrodome that much, I know. So I don't know.
So we'll go to our next topic.
Okay.
I'll start off real quick, and then we'll go Scott, Jacob.
Okay.
Red Auerbach, coach. And Scott, when you brought that up, I was so happy. Hello, Chester. I was so
Chester,
happy.
how you doing?
I love Phil Jackson, and I love a lot of these coaches nowadays. But if I had to play for any coach, it would be Red Auerbach.
Yeah,
Auerbach did a lot of cool stuff. He drafted the first African-American player in the NBA.
Right.
He introduced the fast break. He had a bunch of different roles with the Celtics, not just coach. He also invented his 6-man. You see the videos of him smoking the cigars, and you're like, that's an old school coach if I hadn't seen one.
Right.
It's funny because I read a thing where there used to be restaurants that said no cigars or cigarettes except for Red Auerbach. Makes me laugh. Red Auerbach was the greatest coach of all time until Phil Jackson passed him. I still have Red Auerbach up as my favorite coach. He also coached Bill Russell, and I think he was probably the main influence why Bill Russell got into coaching. I don't know. But I love and adore Red Auerbach, and he led dynasties with those Celtics teams. And what more can you say? But like Red Auerbach will always be, whenever I think of coaches, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, soccer, whatever, whenever I hear coach for any sport, in the top 5 names, I would say Red Auerbach is I think of.
Well,
but
Will,
Scott, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. By the way, you're doing a heck of a job moderating. I'm proud of you, kid. So
Thank you.
here's the thing. If you and Jacob, okay, take this to heart and you turn this coaching thing into a good segment, I will provide you with names and research on it to make it a good segment.
We're making it a new segment.
Yeah, I think you should.
On.
Because like I mentioned to you, Will, in the text that, these players are only as good as the coaching. So, and I'm glad
you got Red Auerbach, Phil Jackson. You got so many great coaches. Yeah. You can even do college coaches. But go ahead, Scott.
Okay. Well, number one, I'm going to agree with you, actually, Will, on Red Auerbach. But I'll tell you why I'm going to do this, okay? Number one, I put Red Auerbach over Phil Jackson because Phil Jackson inherited good teams, and he was a missing piece that had to take him to the next level, where I think Red Auerbach was more of a builder.
100%
and now,
agree.
Take another thing into consideration here too, okay, Jacob and Will. Here's what you got to understand. When he left coaching, the guy was a dynamite GM and president as well. So if you take into consideration the body of work for which Red Auerbach did, you have the first part of his career as a coach, right? Okay. Now the one thing, and this is very painful for me to really mention because it really is hard, is when Patel was coaching the Detroit Pistons, that he wanted Bob McAdoo on so bad that he made a trade with Red Auerbach and he got fleeced by Patel, which is why he's on ESPN. Well, you have Bob McAdoo all day long. All I want is some draft choices. And by the way, when you cash in your draft choices and they turn out to be Cedric Cornbreck Maxwell, and then they end up turning out to be Kevin McHale, that's one way you can fleece somebody without going into glamour. And Dick Vitale never saw an NBA court again, coaching-wise, but it's safe to say he was able to find another career in the broadcast booth. And Dick Vitale is a friend of mine. I worked with him in 1979 at WXYZ, which was ABC radio. And his show proceeded because he was a basketball coach of the University of Detroit Titans at the time. And then the sports talk followed shortly after that. We had a 2-hour show. So he came in. We always talked about it. And now he lives in in the Sarasota Brain. And we caught up at one of his restaurants. We just talked all day long. And I bought some of his memorabilia pieces. And the reason why I did, I normally don't do that because I know it was going toward cancer research. So I don't want to get off topic too much. But what I'm trying to tell you is Red Auerbach was a basketball man through and through between both at the administration. Now, if you really want to make a connection with Auerbach and Jackson, okay, what you end up doing is, in this particular case, what about Phil Jackson's work, okay, as an executive, and boy, did he lay an egg in New York or what? You tell me.
One of the biggest issues with Phil Jackson is the fact that he was trying to, I think, no question in my mind, he was trying to be an Auerbach on that. For one thing, his big issue is the fact that he thinks he can still coach when he's on that thing. It's like he's coming based off of being a coach. And guess what? Being a GM, you have to think that way. You can't do it all. Right. Now, here's the thing about Auerbach. One of the all-time greats, but just think about what would happen. He was a New Yorker. So, and the Knicks, they had a thought process getting him to the Knicks.
Right.
And you have to realize, wonderful, and it's like, what would be the thought process in the history of the Knicks if Auerbach goes there? Because, but at the same time, they didn't exactly get crap when him not being there. They had Rhett Holtzman for 15 years.
Right.
So, I mean, 2 NBA titles and numerous playoffs, 50-win seasons. I mean, he was a great coach. But what if Auerbach said that? What if Auerbach said, yeah, I'll go to the Knicks, and he's there for the rest of his life? I mean, would you be selling the Celtics over and over? The Celtics, to this day, are a top, even when they're losing seasons, are a top quality franchise. He is the reason for that.
Yeah, but you know what, Jacob, and for whatever it's worth, okay, that's all hypothetical. We'll never know.
Sure, but another thing about Auerbach, and I will bring this part, is the whole Larry Bird thing. He was willing to wait a year. He became number 6. Bird became number 6 in the draft. Look how many people were ahead, 5 ahead of him. Now, would any of those others in the draft wait for him? No, I don't think so, because you got to remember, if you're 1 through 6, you're a crappy team. You need the help now. He was literally willing to go through another garbage season to wait for Larry to get over there, and then now you've got Larry versus Magic in the NCAA title game. Yeah. But he was willing to do that. It's like he was willing to. This is what I talk about with fans and with others, the ones that aren't patient. You hear me this all the time with sports fans. It's like they've always been that way in specific things. It's just worse with the internet. But this is what happens when you have a patience. You are willing to wait for something, to build on something for your guy, and to take your year knowing it's going to be garbage. This isn't a Justin Fields thing on the football side or anything when you don't give him anything. You're literally waiting for your guy, then you're going to build around him.
Well, everything you're saying, Jacob, is all justified because we all know the end result, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we all know that. And, I'm probably the only one of the two of you guys that has actually met him in person. Yeah. And I know what kind of an individual is when I covered the Pistons and he was a coach of the Pacers. And I'll reiterate it for the sake of this conversation, okay? That after he was done with the beat reporters and beat media, whatever, I asked him aside, Coach Bird, I realized you weren't one of the better athletes out there, but what made you better than a lot of your opponents? He addressed me about my first name. And I said, Scott, here's the deal. May not be a great athlete, but I can now think everybody and think 3 steps ahead of them. And let me tell you something. For any of you people that know how to play chess out there, okay, to me, that's how this guy made up for his lack of athleticism. So you want to talk about up here? He reminds me of Peyton Manning, when it comes to the NFL in terms of a thinking man who could go out there and work in the gym and get better. Larry Bird was just, you know what? I'd put him in my top 10 all day long. And, I still have mixed feelings about whether I would even put Ron James in that top 10, because you're talking about a lot of years of basketball, okay, to come up with a top 10. And, I'll just throw it at you guys for whatever it's worth, okay? I wouldn't put LeBron James in my top 10.
Well, my thing with Bron is, as far as skill, absolutely. But my top 10 is always going to include the people that invented a specific part of the game. Right. Like Bird, the point forward thing was Larry first, before anything like that, before all that kind of stuff, doing everything around the bench. For the small forward position is him. That was his deal. He had a 6'10" guy that did everything around the court. Him. Then you get the greatest 3-point shooter ever. You get Curry for this era right now. Right. Then you get the way that the point guard position was played. You can use Oscar. You can also use Magic.
Right.
Especially for size, because size is there. I'm saying we're just saying names. To me, it's not all the stats. I mean, we do not deny LeBron's stats. He is the all-time leading scorer now. We don't deny those. It is the fact that who invented what we see. LeBron did not invent the small forward position as we know it. He did not. Yeah. He looks amazing with it. People see it for 20 years. He looks amazing when he does it, but he did not do that. And in truth, you could see partially Dr. J in his day when he had 15 rebounds a game in his rookie year.
Well, so you know what? I got a hypothetical. We're talking about this night. I got a great topic idea. You know what we should do?
What's that?
The 3 of us. I think we should all come up with our top 10 basketball players of all time.
Okay.
That's tough, but I can do that.
Yeah, but being tough, right?
I'm not going to make mine a specific order, but yeah, I got you.
Forget about specific order. Just list 1 through 10. Well, you can do that, right? I'll do it, and then we'll all
Let's do it next show.
Yeah, I think we should. Yeah, no, but my point
And
is,
I think
we do it
show
next
we
week.
could do. I think,
Pardon me?
yeah, and then this coming week we'll do Coach of the Week. We'll do your guy, Chuck Daly.
Yeah, but I'll give you another name to throw out there, Dick Motta.
Yep.
Dick Motta.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
there's
here
some-
there's more franchises.
Anyway. Yeah.
But I want to go back to Jacob's point, Will, if you don't mind. Okay.
No, I don't mind.
When I come up with a top 10, remember a couple key words that are going to come to mind. Tape delay, right?
Yep.
Bankrupt.
Yep.
And the two guys that stand out in my mind are Larry Bird and Magic Johnson.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, and name me another guard, Will, okay, that can actually step up in the pivot and win your team NBA title when Kareem is out.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't want to hear about this LeBron business, okay? I know
I don't like LeBron either, trust me.
Well, I mean, the only thing I have in common with LeBron James is we're both Capricorns, and that's it. I
think he stole being a Capricorn from you. He was like, that guy's Scott's.
I came first, so it's pretty hard to debate you, Will. Really. I mean, really. But think about it. But my point here, though, is this, okay? I'm going to ask both of you guys this. I know that my being the host here, I don't know. We're all having a good time on a Sunday.
Yeah.
But my point is, do you think LeBron James could have handled Bill Laimbeer and Rick Mahorn? If you think that he went into the paint, okay, you ever heard of an elbow? You ever heard of Tylenol 10? Although they haven't invented it, but he probably would need it anyways, or whatever those painkillers would be. Let me tell you, LeBron James would absolutely get killed back in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, he would have to wear like a Rip Hamilton mask. He'd have his nose bashed in.
And that's an excellent point, too. He would need a Rip Hamilton mask. When you think of all the different players that had to wear a mask because they got busted up in the middle of the paint, you know, I mean, and that's where we're going with this in terms of not only overrated, but, you know, I don't think we're getting too far off topic here. I really don't believe, because I think we're all making valid points. But when
the biggest thing I look at is when we bring that up, like I've said before, if you brought LeBron back in a time machine, oh no, he'd be murdered. We'd be out of the league in one game.
Well, yeah,
in one game. It's like but if he would start him in 1980, when the whole thing would get in the first place, and he'd be 40 pounds lighter, he had to do the different diet, giving him the skills that he has now, because he does have skills, giving him those skills and everything like that, then he'd be the full-fledged into that thing for like however many years, you know, on the beatings and everything. Then if he got used to it, possibly. But if you bring him back to the person of now, back then, oh, the guy's a wimp. I've never seen a bigger wimp with muscles.
So I'm going to ask you guys both the same question, okay, if you don't mind. All right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to mention a couple names, okay? How do you think LeBron James would have fared against Oscar Robertson? Jacob, you go ahead and start.
Ooh, that would be a beautiful matchup, actually. Because it would be a beautiful matchup, because I can say this about Bron. He has skills. He's got skills. If you go skill versus skill, now got to remember, if you're bringing it back to the time, Robertson, he hit the floor a lot more. He hit the floor a lot more and everything like that. Now 6'4" versus 6'8". Right. So he did not have a lot of the people of LeBron's size at that time were basically in one position. That's what a small forward used to be. Right. So it would have been such a different. If you bring him to the skill level, it'd been beautiful to watch. Because the one thing about LeBron would block him, but then he would just do a mid-range game. You know, Oscar Robertson would. He'd be doing a mid-range and long-range games and just smoke on that kind of side. It would be a wonderful matchup.
Okay. Well, why don't you answer that question, please?
I think the scales pound for pound against Oscar Robertson would be fun. I agree with Jacob. But if he would have to go against like Will Chamberlain and Bill Russell in the 60s, he would get destroyed. He would get out-rebounded by a ton. He would probably have like 2 rebounds per game.
Okay. So then let me throw another number, because one guy who's really, you know, when we get on the J.J. Redick hammer machine, okay, I'm going to mention Bob Cousy. You know what? Will, you lead off. How do you think that LeBron James would fare against a guy like Bob Cousy?
I don't think he would last. I think Bob Cousy he was called the Houdini of the hardwood for a reason. Yeah, LeBron's 4th all-time in assists, and Cousy's, I don't know what he's ranked. But still, when you think of the all-natural point guard, you think of Cousy how he did those passes, how he practiced those skills when he was a youth, how his dad trained him, how he was ambidextrous. Give me Bob Cousy. Give me Bob Cousy.
What about you, Jacob?
Well, Cousy did not go. See, Cousy didn't go into the lane when it was the Wilt Chamberlain around. You did not see it. I'd seen the highlights. He was passing it all off. So by themselves, it would be rough. He'd just be shooting a lot more, or he'd probably have a lot more assists. He'd have a lot more assists. He'd be waiting. He would be waiting for somebody to get inside. Because remember, you got to remember, so much different. He wouldn't have gone. The thing about Cousy is he would not have gone in with a guy that big, and stuff like that. Like he passed off so much. I mean, the amount of assists he had, he would have. But one of the biggest things about it is he would have just waited. He would have had probably, if you would put them against each other, he probably would have had another 3 or 4 or 5 more assists a game if you put those two against each other.
So let me ask you guys another hypothetical. Sorry, Will, if I'm stealing your moderator business.
No, we got 15 minutes.
Okay, good. So why do you think I asked both of you that particular question? We'll lead off.
Why I think you asked those is because LeBron's a pass-first kind of player and is always wanting to set up teammates. He even came out, I don't know when he said it, he loves to score, but his thing is when he came out, said, I want to facilitate and help my teammates out.
But yet, meanwhile, he passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah, exactly, which is the ironic thing.
Right. Well, no, it really isn't ironic. You know why? Well, because the game has changed to a point where even a little slap on the finger gets you a foul. Where back then,
for real.
during the year that I was actually covering it, okay, I saw a lot of heads hit the floor, and it's not like those floors are rubber, man. So, Jacob, let me ask you the same question. Why do you think I asked this question?
Because there's a lot of people on the television screen, JJ Redick included,
right,
that think he could play in any era.
Exactly.
They think he can play in any era, and it's like, see, the biggest thing that people forget is we're almost shrinking him if we're going to play him against Oscar Robertson and definitely against Cousy, because in those times he was 6'8",
right? Which,
like I said, it did not go full time for the small forward to do everything with the ball until Bird.
And you know what, Will? Your answer was really good. It really was. Okay, so I just want you to know that. Okay.
No, yeah, I know.
But Jacobs was the one that I was looking for the JJ Redick EMPA thing to come out of Christner tonight. Okay.
Well, my thing with Redick is it's why I don't like ESPN. Some of the things he says, he'll say things like, "Oh, it was just as physical now as it was then." It's like,
no, it's not.
Here's the thing no, of course not. But here's the thing I ask with that is, it's like, for instance, Will or you or Scott or anything. Let's just say tomorrow we got the contract from ESPN. Okay, right. Let's just pretend for a second. How much do we go into our dressing room? Are we going to be expecting a bullet point script saying which side we have to take? Because some of these takes reek of we need one side and we need the other. Pick one instead of having your own mind, which is why I don't like ESPN. I don't feel like everybody's got their own. Maybe Stephen A. He gets the money, but I don't feel like everybody's got their own mind in country, in that ESPN, in that station.
You know what, Jacob? It's amazing how you say that, because during the Super Bowl, I turn TV off and don't want to watch it no more. I might go back on and watch Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp, because I like Skip in a sense because he's an old school journalist. But the thing is I'm sick and tired of First Take shoving down this era of basketball and manipulating the narrative like Smith does. And I don't want to watch it no more. I really don't. I mean, you know what? I'm sick and tired of it. Don't shove down programming to me, which is so far from the truth, okay? Because it really is. That I lived it in a different era.
Stephen A's over 50 years old. He remembers things, but here's the thing I have to wonder with him. How much would he shove down this era or that era of basketball if his Knicks won more?
Well, let me ask you. Okay, when you talk about with Chris Mad Dog Russo, you know how badly that Stephen A. Smith is outclassed, because guys like Chris Mad Dog Russo could be on our show here. Because
Absolutely.
I love Mad Dog Russo.
Yeah, so I when I did watch it, I was watching it on Wednesday. I just got fed up with it. You know what? Don't sit here and brag about an era of basketball now. And I'll tell you why. Well, number one, we have to have a play-in tournament to keep it interesting. Two, a week ago, you had the worst All-State game on the planet, which had 4.59 viewership, down 27% compared to a year ago, where it's a layup fest, is what it is.
We had the 176-175 game though.
Yeah, and yet once upon a time we had a show on here where we talked about the Pistons and the Nuggets, and that one still holds the test of time.
I know it took a little bit, but no, I think that wasn't that game the full time. Like night. Wasn't that the 4 quarters, or was that overtime?
I'm almost certain it went into overtime. I don't know.
No, but it might have been. It was because this was 2 overtimes for this 176 game. But
really,
yeah, but no, but that's the thing. I just ask. The amount of things that he does to shove down. Mind you, giving Stephen A. credit, he gives he thinks Larry Bird's a bad man, as he calls him. And it's so he gives him that. But other than maybe Bird and Magic, but he shoves a lot of the old school down. But you have to wonder, how much would he give? How much would he be shoving it down if his Knicks were a dynasty? He might just love it.
Secret the guy is a Knicks fan, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
You know what? Here's the deal, okay? And Will, I know you're smart to pick up on this. Number one, we all know that Mike Greenberg is a homer, okay, for the New York Jets, and then Steve.
Love Mike Greenberg.
Yeah, he does. And meanwhile, we know that Smith is, a homer for the Knicks. But I don't care whether you're a homer or not, okay? The reality is he's paid to broadcast, and if that guy thinks he's going to impress me because he thinks he can downgrade or make every guy on there look like an idiot, well, you know what? I'd love to be able. Mad Dog Russo is his best challenger. He really is, because he goes back to what the eras that we're talking about. Okay, so when you need a play-in tournament to keep it interesting, and now a mid-season tournament, and all these little stupid gimmicks to keep the game interested when load management is absolutely killing it anyhow, among other things, to me, you're trying to sell me on a league that has taken such a hit. It's ridiculous. I'm just telling you. And that's why I appreciate being on the show with you guys, because the reason why I do is you're talking about an era of basketball that I was a very big part of for a lot of years. And I know you've heard it before. The Detroit Pistons gave me a piece of the championship floor because I went out there and covered the team all year, and they said, thank you very much. I mean, and that's hanging in my
wall. I actually want to see this.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take a picture of it and send it to you, Will. I will. I mean, but my point is this. Yeah, I mean, this guy's being here. I don't care about this modern NBA. It's absolutely garbage. And, Will, even though you weren't on our show when we talked on Thursday, I will mention that I thought that I hope Russell Westbrook sticks it to the Lakers with the Clippers. I was actually pulling.
I hope he does too.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess to try to make sure I stay on point, is and for me that's always a challenge. But at least I got two patient sets of ears here. We're not stupid, okay?
Right.
And when I look at Pete Maravich and all the old time guys, it's again, everybody that watches this league nowadays is simply delusional.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to our last topic real fast. Just quick answer. We don't need a reason why, maybe like a quick reason why. Matchup of all-timers, now versus then. Klay Thompson, Alex English. I'll go first. If you look at the all-time for regular season so far for scoring, points, rebounds, assists, blocks, it's Alex English. Don't get me wrong, Klay Thompson, phenomenal three-point shooter. So give me Alex English. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Well, you want a quick answer? I'll do it. Alex English.
My thing, and I'm going to say if we go quick, and I'm going to go tiny long, not much. The thing about if you go dynamic games, Klay's got a bunch of them. Dynamic. He's got the 60 points in 29 minutes. And it's like he's got those kind of things. There's dynamic, 36 points in a quarter. Dynamic games, getting on, just that on moment. Klay. Consistency, staying healthy, everything being the number one scorer of the 80s, English. And people, It's just the reason I put these two together because of the shooting and everything. But the consistency's got to go to Alex English. Klay Thompson's got a lot more dynamic. Alex English was just consistent. I mean, he had 28.4 points a game at his highest and everything like that. But he was 25, 28, 26, 24, 20. It was just constant every year. But he also didn't have as many great players around him either.
So, Jacob, we all agree on English, right? Even though he has a language named after him called English, right?
Right.
All right. So, do you remember who his coach was?
Oh, yeah, Doug Moe.
There you go. So, there you go. I'd give Doug Moe the edge over Steve Kerr all day long because he never told his guys to play defense. So, guys like English can run amok.
Yeah,
so,
and Doug, the thing about it is the fact that Steve Kerr, to me, is a better coach. Doug Moe's a better offense. But it's like Doug Moe didn't want them to play defense at all. They played defense on Kerr's side, which was a good thing. But the issue of it is the fact of consistency, health, all that stuff. It goes to English. Dynamic, in moment,
right.
Klay. I mean, he had some crazy ones.
Yeah, but I'm just looking at the question presented. A or B, okay? Not none of the above, all of the above, or any of that business, okay? Exactly. I know what a great coach is Steve Kerr is. It didn't hurt that he went ahead and learned under Greg Popovich and Phil Jackson. We haven't even taken that into consideration. But the reality is your question is Klay Thompson versus Alex English.
Yeah.
And you know what? In the shortest answer that I could have given anybody in my 43 years in the business, I gave you a 10-second answer, and I've never done that before. It's always for English. Period.
Yeah.
Well,
English, true.
Okay, so guys, that wraps up our show tonight. Tell us where we can find you. I will go first. Wednesday nights, you can find me on the NFL Roundtable hosted by Smokin' Jeremy B on his YouTube channel. Thursday nights, you can find me on the Sip Off hosted by Megan Price. Sunday nights here on Basketbros with the usual suspects. And when the gauntlet calls me, like Jacob always says, I'm there to answer. Scott, go right ahead.
You know what? I'm full of short answers tonight, and everybody thinks I'm really drinking the Kool-Aid. But the reality is,
drinking something.
Yeah. Well, I did. Diet Coke tonight to get me geared for this show. But at any rate, the way to find me is just please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Period. South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. You'll find people like Will Vogel, JB Ellis, Jennifer Matthews Lewis, Jacob Christner, and the list goes on and on. Jordan Long, don't want to forget him. He's only on every week anyways. And will be getting more airtime. I can guarantee you that. So, just subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. And if you want to locate me on Twitter, when you're watching, at Tribune South, and also check out our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. So, great to be on here. Love it.
Yep. Sundays here. Monday nights, the pundit views, one-on-one interviews, and we're building up for the next month. Going to be some great ones. Tuesday nights, nothing. Thank God I got a day off. Wednesday night's a triple header now. It is the pundits, Scott, by the way, with Scott and Jay and Jen. Then I'm on with Scott with the Sports Exchange with everybody else, and then I do the Confidential. Thursday nights would be with TJ Sanson off of Sideline Sports with Yin and Yang, different things about film and theater, about psychology, about politics, everything in between. And when I get a call, and when I get the call every once in a while, it's the gauntlet. So then we go back and forth on Sunday again.
That wraps up our show, guys. We hope Denzel Snipes is back next week. He should be. Thank you guys for watching another edition of Basketbros. We will see you in 7 days. Bye now.